In ancient Rome, there was a punishment far more terrifying than death. It was known as damnatio memoriae, the absolute erasure of memory. When an emperor or a tyrant committed sins deemed unforgivable, their name was chiseled away from public monuments, their decrees were burned to ash, and their very existence was violently scrubbed from the pages of history. Today, at the absolute peak of Hollywood's modern empire, this ancient, ruthless sentence is being executed against one of the greatest cultural icons of our time, Brad Pitt. At over 60 years old, Brad Pitt possesses everything a man could ever dream of. A net worth exceeding $300 million, eternal global fame, 2 Academy Awards, and a stunning youthful romance. Yet behind the closed doors of his sprawling estates, he is enduring a quiet, agonizing execution, the total systematic erasure of his bloodline from the public sphere. As his 6 children cross the threshold into adulthood, their definitive act of independence has not been a demand for their immense inheritance, but a desperate rush to the courts to strip the name Pitt entirely from their identities. What could possibly drive a family to treat a Hollywood hero like an unspeakable disgrace? To comprehend the depth of this current tragedy, we must travel back to an era when Angelina was not merely a celebrity couple, but a global religion of flawless perfection. Throughout the early 2010s, the world looked upon the Pitt-Jolie household with absolute reverence. It was a beautiful, meticulously crafted mosaic of a global family. 3 adopted children from Cambodia, Vietnam, and Ethiopia, seamlessly united with 3 biological children carrying the genes of the most beautiful couple on Earth. Brad Pitt was universally marketed as the ultimate patriarch, warm, deeply patient, and fiercely protective. But beneath the blinding flash of red carpet cameras, a suffocating reality was hardening. Raised in a deeply conservative, highly structured environment in Missouri, Brad brought a mindset of absolute control and rigid discipline into his parenting. Angelina, by contrast, was the very definition of wild freedom, intense empathy, and fluid boundaries. While this polarity initially acted as a powerful magnet that drew them together, it gradually transformed into a psychological pressure cooker. And the volatile catalyst that finally caused the entire structure to detonate was Brad's severe, escalating battle with alcoholism. Control curdled into tyranny, and strict discipline mutated into an atmosphere of constant fear for the young children trapped inside it. The final breaking point arrived on September 14, 2016. A routine private flight carrying the entire family from France back home to Los Angeles became the stage for a historical collapse. According to heavily detailed, unsealed FBI investigation documents, Brad Pitt had been drinking heavily before boarding. High above the clouds, inside the claustrophobic metal tube of the aircraft, his last remaining shreds of restraint dissolved. A violent argument erupted between Brad and Angelina inside the plane's restroom. The official federal reports paint a terrifying picture. Brad reportedly grabbed Angelina by the head, shook her violently, and slammed her against the wall. When one of their children courageously stepped forward to verbally defend their mother, Brad allegedly lunged at the child like an enraged animal. That child was Maddox, who was only 15 at the time. To shield his mother, Maddox stood directly in the line of fire. In that singular, horrific heartbeat, an irreversible fracture occurred. The fragile boundary separating a stern father from an active physical threat was shattered forever. The moment the wheels touched the tarmac in Los Angeles, Angelina knew there was no turning back. 5 days later, she filed for divorce. Brad Pitt walked off that aircraft having lost his family's soul. Many observers genuinely believed that time would heal these deep lacerations. They assumed that once Brad achieved sobriety, publicly expressed remorse and underwent years of therapy, his children would naturally offer forgiveness. They completely miscalculated the psychological scars. The most brutal revenge does not manifest as explosive tell-all interviews or public smear campaigns. It is delivered through absolute icy silence and systemic rejection. In 2020, a private Instagram account verified to belong to Pax Thien erupted with a chilling Father's Day message that sent shockwaves through the industry. He wrote, "Happy Father's Day to this world-class asshole. You have made the lives of those closest to me a constant hell. You may tell yourself and the world whatever you want, but the truth will come to light one day." This unfiltered declaration from his adopted Vietnamese son acted as the first tumbling domino in a massive chain reaction. As the children matured into legal adulthood, they used their newfound freedom to sever their ties one by one. Maddox quietly stopped using the name Pitt in any non-legal document. Zahara, upon joining her university sorority, proudly shouted to the crowd, "My name is Zahara Marley Jolie," leaving her father's name completely in the past. Vivienne, the youngest daughter, chose to credit herself solely as Vivienne Jolie while working alongside her mother on a major theatrical production. But the definitive, shattering blow to Brad Pitt's legacy came from Shiloh. Unlike her older siblings, Shiloh is Brad's firstborn biological child, the one who famously inherited his striking physical features and commanding presence. On the exact day of her 18th birthday, the very first moment she possessed the independent legal right to do so, Shiloh hired and funded her own lawyer to file a formal petition to legally drop Pitt from her name. This was not a rebellious, impulsive teenage tantrum. It was a cold, calculated legal declaration to the world. I refuse to be a monument to your legacy. In response to this devastating wave of rejection, Brad's public relations machinery worked tirelessly to spin a counter-narrative. They alleged a dark campaign of parental alienation, claiming that Angelina Jolie had spent a decade systematically brainwashing the children, injecting toxic hatred for their father into their minds. Yet, leading family psychologists offer a far more grounded perspective. In Hollywood, immense wealth can easily buy media loyalty and the most ruthless attorneys on earth. But it cannot buy the genuine, unified consensus of 6 fiercely independent young adults. Angelina did not need to wage a war of words. She simply had to provide a safe, consistent harbor where the children felt protected, heard, and validated. As the children grew, they observed a stark contrast. On one side stood a mother who actively paused her Hollywood career to anchor their lives. And on the other, a father who continuously dragged their mother through relentless, exhausting lawsuits over a French winery. The children were not brainwashed. They simply grew up, kept their eyes wide open, and made a conscious choice. Their rejection is not a conspiracy. It is the natural harvest of a decade of accumulated disillusionment. Now, navigating his 60s, Brad Pitt appears to have successfully constructed a brand new life. He is seen with beautiful partners decades his junior, his fashion is celebrated as effortlessly youthful, and his artistic standing remains untouchable. Yet an undeniable truth remains. A man's ultimate legacy is never cast in the gold of an Oscar statuette sitting silently on a shelf. It is carried forward by the living generation that bears his name. When a man conquers the entire world, cements himself as the definitive icon of a century, yet cannot convince a single one of his own children to keep his name, is that a grand victory or the most tragic? Total defeat imaginable? Brad Pitt achieved immortality on the silver screen, but he has been systematically erased from his own bloodline. Perhaps this profound isolation at the absolute top of the world is the permanent cost of a single drunken night in 2016. Or perhaps It is the final tragic verdict for a man who believed his stardom made him untouchable.